Sandra.
One last question.
Yes, always. Good evening.
Minus.
Listen to speaker.
Check one, check two. Yep, you don't turn those.
Right. That's what I'm looking for. All right. Thank you. Good evening. We usually start our meetings with our invitation, so if everybody stand for prayer, please. Councilman Hopkins.
Heavenly Father, we have much to be thankful for this evening, Father. Thankful for all who have gathered here this day. Thankful, Father, for those who give their time and their energy to serve the city, and for the city staff, Father, that makes all these things possible for us. And Father, we're also very thankful for our emergency services district, who on Saturday put out a potentially very dangerous fire that could have significantly burned Bulverde Estates, Father. We're very thankful that you have given these people the ability and the resource to be able to handle these wildfires. They're so dangerous. We pray, Father, for your wisdom and for your discernment this evening as we consider this evening's agenda. Guide us and direct us, Father, that we might know that the decisions we make, the impact that they have on the future of our community and our citizens, Father, that we might serve them well. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
So we're gonna call our meeting to order at 6:29, 52 seconds. We'll start with the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I pledge allegiance to the flag, one state, under God, one indivisible.
All right. There's a sign-up sheet over here if you'd like to speak. You need to be signed up on the sign-up sheet, and also address which item that you are going to talk about. You will get 3 minutes on that one set agenda to address any of your comments. And we'll be picking that up here in just a second. All right, so we're going to start off with our reports and presentations and proclamations. And so we're going to start off with 2A, the Planning Department update, summary of January 2026 activities.
All right, Mayor and members of council, most of the items we're going to have are either going to be covered on the agenda or in the chairman's report. We're continuing to work on additional ordinance revisions to bring us into compliance with state law on a number of other items. Has anybody got any specific questions for me at this time? Thank you.
Okay. 2B, Planning and Zoning Commission, report from Planning and Zoning Commission. Is Ashley here? We don't have anybody tonight? Okay. All right. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and move to our regular agenda items. 3A, hold a public hearing and consider the approval of an ordinance granting a variance to section 3.08.103I of the City of Bulverde Code of Ordinances and at, 29905 Bulverde Lane, Bulverde, Texas, 78163. I think Mr. Lozano is here.
All right, Mayor and Council, this is the sign variance request for bullet flooring that was discussed at last month's meeting. If you recall, the council and the applicant had some extensive discussions about expectations for signage at this location. They were asked to put together a proposal and come back at this meeting. The proposal presented is in your packet. Is the applicant here? If you'll go ahead and come up, sir.
Thank you. So these were the three that I wrote down to a simpler version based on our last conversation. Mixed them up a little bit so we'd have 3 different versions to look at. And the idea would be to actually attach this to the existing sign that I have there for the gym and probably frame it out so that they can be attached together in one spot.
Okay, so my question is, the size of these are going to be, what are the sizes of these that are gonna go up on top? What is it, like 2.5 by 6?
2 feet by 8 feet. So I based it off of making it smaller than existing, so a little bit more limited to size, but the width of it or the length of it, so that it would fit in the same
Is
section.
it just one-sided?
It'd be two-sided.
Two-sided?
Yep.
And that's the only place we're placing signs, correct?
That's the only place.
Is this a plastic sign?
It's made out of sheet metal, and then it's laminated with the design on top.
Right. And how is it attached to the, well, you just have 2 ground stakes there now, and the existing sign there for the CrossFit, that's plastic, is it tied to the
Correct. And so the idea is to use the same steel pipe that I framed the one in the back of the truck with to replace that setup, so that it would just be steel pipe framing this 2x8 section and then the 4x8 section all together. That way it kind of reinforces it, makes it nice and rigid, and makes it look a little bit
Does it
nicer.
have like a border,
Uh,
or is it just a structure that's gonna be the?
just structure. I'll probably paint it black so it doesn't stand out, just let the sign stand out.
Okay.
Councilman Hayes?
I think he does what, what we were asking for. It, tells where the business is, gives the address, sets for pickups and deliveries. I mean, I think they complied with what we were asking them to do. It's just one sign. I don't have a problem.
Councilman Alexander?
Yeah, I appreciate you doing that, taking a look at it. I mean, I don't have a problem with it. I guess the biggest thing, do we have to pick one of these signs in? Is that the thing too, or is it the 3 options?
Yes.
We pick one?
I like
I
three.
So, I guess, that's such a matter of preference to me right now that, it'd be what you're trying to do, your logos, or not your logos. I don't know what you're trying to accomplish on that. So you have the last one with those, shields on it. So, there might be some branding you're doing there.
Really, it's just trying to give you guys 3 options. I agree. If for what you guys were describing, I think the third one's the best because it just has the business name and what we're trying to achieve. But to come up with 3 options, I just threw them on there so you have something to look at.
Yeah, and you're okay with either 3?
I am absolutely.
Councilman Bob?
Thanks for taking notes. Coming back.
Councilman Hawkins?
This is in floodplain, right?
Correct.
So you're going to have the supporting structure will be anchored in concrete, I assume, to be able to hold it in place.
I could. That was kind of trying to figure out the best design. I was actually thinking about maybe having it on like 2 feet so it could just stabilize itself and let water run fluid without having anything mounted to the floor.
I guess my concern is that you would be able to keep it in place in the event of a flood as opposed to having it go downstream and impact probably across the street over there in the airport.
So I'm just gonna point out, they'll need a floodplain development permit from Plymouth County for this project. We won't be involved in it anymore, but that'll be looked at through that process.
Yeah, that would be my concern, is that you secure it in there so that it'll stay in place.
Councilman Watkins?
I'd like to piggyback off that. After all.
Councilman Watkins? Watson, excuse me.
That's okay. How close is this to the driveway? Where is this relative to the driveway?
If you go back to the next picture, so that picture's from the driveway. So I'm
Okay,
standing
so-
on the driveway right there.
So it's close.
Yep.
Yeah, I don't have any other questions.
Councilman Curlitz?
Yeah, so I think Bullet Flooring definitely needs a sign there at that location. You do business there. I just think, if council's gonna approve an offsite sign, I think it's our job to, build language into the variance to bestow our sign ordinance material regulations into this. It's a monument sign. He's already putting poles up with the sign. You ought to just go ahead and build it to our spec.
I think as Danny had said a few minutes ago, this isn't in our jurisdiction. All we're approving is having the extra
Yeah,
sign there
Still,
for the second sign from the different
the
locations.
only thing we could regulate in the ETJ is offsite signs, but we could build into the variance language.
Well, I know, but that's not a discussion right now. So what we're discussing is approving the sign area. Okay. So, any other questions? Anything?
Do we have to decide on the sign?
Yeah, so
It's gonna get washed out.
I think we like number 3.
Yeah.
You were saying?
3?
I'm okay with, none of them offend me, so if the council would rather have the third one, I'm fine with it. And the applicant said he was okay with that one, so that's what we want.
Did you have a preference?
But yeah, I like the second one because it has the logo on there, but I also know what y'all's goals were. And so I don't have an issue if you want to go with the more basic one.
I think what our wording was, Councilman Goff, was that we didn't want it wasn't for them to, it wasn't a sign to, commercialize their business. It was a sign to show pickup and deliveries. So that's the only reason I was thinking 3. I mean, I'd like to hear you.
Okay.
Anybody have any objections to 3?
I don't have any objections to 3. I would just say that I think we should make sure that we make it clear that this is limited to the identification of on-site activity and is only authorized as long as that on-site activity is ongoing. In other words, this is not a blanket authorization for other signs. This is just just for this business purpose.
Completely understood.
And in this location only.
Right.
So not along with fence for the park.
Yeah, just one sign, one location.
Do you want to make a motion?
I have a motion. I move to approve the variance to section 3.08.1031 for 29905 Woodbury Lane, limited to one two-sided sign panel, the number 3, co-located on the existing sign structure, identifying operational activities occurring on site. This approval does not authorize a new freestanding sign structure or additional off-site signage and shall be valid only so long as the identified operational activity continues at this location.
I'll second.
Opposed? Motion passes. Was that 6-1 or was that 7-0? 6-1. Sorry, I couldn't use the highlight.
Congratulations.
All right, hey, thank you so much for all your participation help.
Thank you. Thank you for coming back and doing what we asked. All right, moving on to item number 3B. So receive a presentation from Nancy Brenner regarding a development proposal for property located on the west side of Bulverde Road near the intersections of Casey Road and John Charles Road. And we are just listening to this. And he'll have his 30 minutes, please.
All right, Mayor and Council, this is not part of any formal city process. No authorizations are being contemplated tonight. The city in the past and tonight has extended the courtesy of coming and discussing a project in general terms before a landowner commits significant resources to developing it, to hear comments from the public and anything that the council may wish to say. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Matthew Bremer, representative of property owner.
Thank you. So, good evening, and thank you very much, Mayor Hayes and Council, for the opportunity to introduce myself to some of you for the very first time, and others of you for a follow-up on what has been, for the better part of 2 decades of my life, a labor of love that I've toiled and toiled over many a time off and on. In fact, I am proud to say that I contributed to the first comprehensive plan, Sunrise 2025. Boy, did that sort of go by fast. With some concepts on how to grow with the spirit of Bulverde, not only intact, but enhanced. I'm Matthew Bremer, a 6th-generation ranch owner along Bulverde Road, part-time resident, Texan, and passionate preservationist. I'm also an architect. I have a small practice in New York City, have built, lectured, and taught architecture and planning around the country and abroad.
and am the former president of the American Institute of Architects in New York City. The project we'll be talking about this evening, many of you may know already, but it is located from approximately Casey Road to on the west side of Bulverde Road to about a quarter mile from Highway 46, right where the large overhead transmission lines pass. What remains of our ranch today extends with significant portions having been taken out for 3 partners that we have sold off to that have really become not only neighbors, but people that we're committed to working with. That is Riverside Community Church, Gloria Deo Academy, and most recently, Mission Ready Counseling Center, which converted our family home into a counseling center for veterans primarily with PTSD. But this is really where I come with my heart wide open. I wasn't planning on taking this project back up, but after going into contract and out of contract with a couple of developers, having placed it on the market for a couple of times, getting some very substantial offers, the vision and the cohesion for what we saw as the legacy of our ranch never transpired. I had this at heart after my father and most recently my aunt passed away, and the project came back into my hands. I've watched this family ranch the last 150 years, seven, actually soon to be 8 generations on the ranch, toil, make it their own, figure out how to make very honest, modest livings off of this drought-prone, flood-prone area. And we've watched it evolve. My dear aunt, Zeta Jansen, whom some of you may know, just passed away very recently, founded the Stage Theater there. Very proud of the arts and culture that she brought to it. And there's a history of preserving the land, but also transforming it. So I don't come here today as a developer who just bought a plot of land who thinks we can put up however many houses once water is solved, and it may look like what's happening in Seguin or New Braunfels or somewhere else. I come here with my toolbox and my heart for figuring out what this place could be for the next 150 years. In other words, this is a real generational legacy project that we have an opportunity to do something very special with. So this picture shows the inspiration for an intergenerational community. This is my now deceased father with my then 4-year-old niece. The ranch is still undeniably beautiful. It's still run as a cattle ranch. We are there as much as we possibly can. My sister and I, while I live in New York, she lives in Portland, live very busy lives, travel a lot. This is really our heart. And we honestly see this as a place that we want to come back to. Now, I'm not necessarily a rancher, neither is she. So going back to that idea of the toolbox, bring to the land what you do best. And what I do best is transform in hopefully very impactful and sustainable ways. I've worked with councils, community boards, city planning in New York City, building everything from very, very complex affordable housing, which I will say has won municipal, state, national awards. I'm pretty proud of what I've done. And what I can't see is us maintaining this land in perpetuity as a cattle ranch. I mean, we are the dark donut in the hole, in the suburban hole. When I grew up here, I thought I lived in the sticks. Now, if I drive up Highline Drive and I look out and want to tell my friends, my partner, whoever, where the extents of our ranch are, I'm like, well, those are the areas that are dark. And it's pretty clear. I think we had the opportunity to do something that is incredibly special, incredibly unique, and can be the pride and joy of the city. I think I'm also uniquely positioned to work with the city in a very collaborative way. Here's a juxtaposition of a couple of photos. On the left, this is a photo that I took out of the airplane flying in one of these times. I'm not going to say where it is, but it's very close to here. And if you go on Google Maps, which I'm sure you all do, you know that the city of Bulverde has developments that are not far off from that. We can't do that anymore. Well, I'm here tonight well aware of all of the issues of water. I also know that it's going to take years to solve it. And that's also why I'm in kind of a unique position. I'm not some developer who just went and bought 208 acres and has a huge bank loan with the clock ticking. We've had this land forever. We've got our Longhorns and our Angus and branded Galloways. And all I do is try to get back here, manage the fences that are invariably always down, and enjoy the beauty that it is. I also think it's time to really think how we can transform this the right way. And the reason that I think we need to start this now, and yes, I fully follow all of the issues with water, but there are going to be solutions. I know we've been studying the machinations of what's happening, and we need to start working together collaboratively now to work out the kinks. And for me also to establish the right entitlement process, which my friend and land use attorney Rob Killen will talk about in a few moments, for what the best process is. We can't sit in our hands for 3, 4, 5 years while Texas Water Company has the moratorium. I think we can actually start right now figuring out what this really wants to be. This is our homestead. It is, in my opinion, at our home, and by our homestead, I mean this was the original farmstead with a couple of houses, barns, corn cribs, pens, orchards that are now fallow, gardens where everything was raised. Everyone lived off the land. It's an incredibly beautiful place. When I'm here, I get around the hill country. I've seen the most beautiful sunsets. I've seen some of the most beautiful little destination spots that are going up and that have been there forever. Nothing is better, in my opinion, I'm also wildly biased, than the sunsets from this little elevated knoll. Probably the best architect that was working on our ranch was my great-great-grandfather, because he had the forethought to site the homestead on the breeziest knoll. He understood the southeasterly breezes. He knew he wanted those sunsets too. He was right in the middle of the ranch. He cleared where he needed to clear. He didn't clear where he knew that the cows were going to need shade trees. It's a special place. Now, with that comes zoning. what we're looking at right now may be the exact or the rough extent of the property. We're always looking at what goes in, what goes out, maybe a little this, maybe a little that. But for the most part, the middle, most of it in the middle is C1. We've got some R1 on the left, and we've got some what's in the blue is outside the city limits, ETJ. This is the classic case of what we call spot zoning. There was logic to how this was drawn. I understand that. I've been doing this for over 30 years. But it doesn't make sense for a planning perspective, because you've got these incongruous uses next to each other. It also could lead to some really not so good unsustainable development. We wanted to draw this map to see what as of right would look like with the current zoning. With the C1, with its with following all of the zoning, buildings, parking requirements for the buildings, taking into account riparian, floodplain, all the like, we're at 50% or better of impervious cover. I know there's none of you that like that. I certainly don't either. I do a lot of most of our work is highly sustainable, using sort of best practices in all possibilities. So in starting the process, we came up with a series of goals, and those goals really stem from the ranch itself. It's what we love. It's the passion. It's the only reason that I would be crazy enough to take this on in my mid-late 50s. But I think I'm a little wiser now than I was 20 years ago when I first started these master plans. And I've also, along the way, managed to cultivate a whole bunch of really extraordinary potential partnerships. Some folks that are really excited and working with us. The landscape architect who's been working very closely with me, for instance, she is a National Smithsonian Cooper Hewitt Design Award winner for best practices in preservation development and land sustainability. Best in show. And what I would like to do is develop the land, and I'm sure there would be desires for there to be as least density as possible. I think there are economics that come into play. We're also not in a rush in the meat of the project. We want to create a project that also really engenders community in a unique way. So what I'm proposing is a mixed-use cluster development using small rural villages as a model, locating clusters of homes around preservation areas and natural features. This is not a suburban tract anything. They will be connected by clusters. They will be connected by matrices of walking paths, bike paths, and a whole lot of preservation area. Preserved woodlands, hopefully some restored meadows. And the heart of the project, which I'll talk about in a minute, something that could be done in conjunction with a PDD, or it could be done sooner with a special use project, which is a farm, converting our homestead into a working farm, working organic farm destination, farm to fork restaurant, very, very small scale, but upscale hotel. And this is where I get really excited, because this is where my passion is, and where I've met a lot of colleagues who run some of the best, what we call destination rural regenerative farm hotels in the country. And if you know anything about luxury hospitality and travel these days, it's where the trend is going. People want to get away. People want to get back to the dirt. People want to put down their phones, and people want to like go sniff lavender rather than think about how AI might steal their jobs. We want to maintain unique hill country character in the architecture, limit all the plantings to native species, and really work with topography. I'm an architect, and so I'm not planning any, the worst thing I could possibly imagine that would ruin it for me is to bring in some spec home builder who just lays out what you see all over the place. There are a lot of unique home builders that I've been talking to, also sort of more state-of-the-art, modular, whatever, where we're talking about doing a really unique hill country vernacular, small, the houses that I'm going to propose are small. I see this geared toward, as I said, intergenerationality, but young professional families and empty nester downsizing retirees. Moving into maps really quickly, because I want to give Rob some time to speak. Floodplains, riparian, water. This is at the core of the project. This is going to define the project. It's what it's going to look like. We're really excited about the way we started to lay out the project, where the ranch roads, the old ranch roads that started with carriages and then my dad's old ranch truck, those become the pathways. A, it promotes tree preservation, and B, it keeps the legibility of the ranch there. It's not clear cutting and turning it into something it's not. This really is a preservation development. Then we see a lot of what we want to imagine as shared spaces. This is not intended to be a gated community. This is intended to be a welcoming community with whereby the little hotel, farm, rural destination at its center also functions as sort of private club. These little houses are not going to have they're not going to have pools. In fact, we're looking at models where they're actually sold as condos. Things have changed these days. People don't necessarily like the idea of maintaining an acre or 5 acres of yard or whatever the case may be. They like the idea of maintaining a little garden, maybe not much bigger than where we are right now, enough for letting the dog out to do his or her business, to barbecue, to have the fire pit, and to have your privacy. Everything else is really about community. And what I'm excited about is when we overlay the clusters of these homes, we're really creating these little mini villages or hamlets. And there are multiple plans, which I can go through, and they all have sort of different numbers of homes attached to them. And all I can say is they are going to, this is plan number 734. We'll probably be at 936 the way we draw stuff in our office.
Mr. Burke, you have 5 minutes.
Okay, so things are going to evolve. And how do we evolve this? That's really based on the entitlement process. So we would like to talk about potential of a PDD structure, alternatives, how we want to address water. And I will just say, I want to address water as sustainably as possible. Everything being, there's not going to be anything that isn't native or low water consumptive. And on an architectural level, as all my buildings are everywhere else we work on, they're very low water consumptive. I think we can make something that is truly unique, that is a village. These are a couple of views that are just imagining how people live more collectively in what I sort of call country condos. Here's a little bit about the homestead. that I talked about as a hotel, as a small rural destination hotel, barn hotel. These are both inspiration images by a lot of the folks that I've come to really respect and chat with, and they are very interested. They've been to some of them have been to the ranch, and they think it's as beautiful as I do. So they think I'm not crazy. I probably still think I'm crazy, but I think we have an incredible opportunity. I need to turn this over to Rob to talk about the entitlement process.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Rob Killam, attorney law, Killam Griffin and Fairmont. Our address is 10101 Reunion Place in San Antonio. Matthew's giving you a lot of information. Like a few minutes left, so I'm going to keep my remarks brief. But you heard Matthew speak with passion about his vision for this site, his family's home for many, many generations, and his vision for a project that he believes and appears to be compatible with Mulberry Hill, low density, mixed use development. And so it is partially inside city limits, partially outside city limits. Portions inside city limits are commercial and single family residential. Of course, portion outside city limits is not zoned. What we're talking about though is approaching it comprehensively, using a tool in the city's toolbox, an existing mechanism you have, a plan development district, a mechanism I think many of you are familiar with. This is language right out of your code. And if you look at it, talking about projects planned and constructed under a single cohesive plan allows for a better, more innovative design. That is what Matthew presented to you this evening. That's what we'd like to move forward with. We take the portion that's outside city limits, again with council approval, move it into the city and zone the whole property PDD so it's all comprehensively planned and subject to all city regulations. Now, what we're seeking tonight is feedback from the council, feedback from the audience. If the audience has any feedback, really feedback from the council so we can move forward and work with your staff, work with your consultants, vet out all of the potential issues, and then come back to you with a plan that again has been reviewed from a code standpoint, from a land use standpoint, from a planning standpoint, and all of the other things that you will be interested in hearing from. So ultimately, that's what we're seeking. We do have to solve the water and wastewater. That's something, again, we're going to do, and then come back to and talk about that. Again, we want to work with staff, we work with other consultants and utility providers to talk about it. The thing that I mentioned, it is partially outside city limits. There is another mechanism for a comprehensive plan that is subject to city regulations. That would be to move the whole property outside city limits and enter into a development agreement. We think that the planned development district makes a whole lot more sense than disannexing the property that's inside. Bring the property that's outside in, and let's plan it again in a way that plans the future and really captures the vision that Matthew just talked about. So that what I'd like to do is conclude my comments, and we'd like to answer any questions that the council would have. But again, really seeking your direction so we can start visiting with staff. Thank you.
I have two public speakers that would like to comment. Mr. Harper.
Thank you. I'm Steve Harper. I live at 681 Brand Road. We've lived here for 32 years. We have about 70 acres. We have sons, grandsons, granddaughters. We have other ranches as well. We have all kinds of animals, that kind of stuff. And I'm retired chief merchant for HEB and work for Charles Black. So what I heard was a lot of very soft conversation. I didn't hear much in terms of the hard conversation. I'm very familiar with development. One son has a master's in architecture from MIT. He also spoke at the Nobel Prize Awards. So, that level of sophistication doesn't intimidate me. What I'm interested in hearing is, road maintenance, school impact, local congestion, water, wastewater, traffic impact. Right now, we're struggling with traffic impact. We're struggling with construction. We're struggling with cement trucks. We're struggling with dump trucks. We're struggling with a lot of things like that. I didn't hear those kinds of underpinnings. I hope you'll take this in a humorous way. I am Western. I like John Wayne. You know, it takes money to buy whiskey. That's cheap. So I want to hear the details in our community because we're struggling with managing the details. And fortunately, we have a really good city council to do that. But yeah, tonight I heard the dream, and then there's a big step from the dream to reality, and how that occurs, and how the densities, the number of people, the traffic, et cetera, et cetera. I did not hear anything about what you're planning to do for the community in terms of, are you going to dedicate land for fire house? Are you going to dedicate land for a police substation? Are you going to dedicate land for green land? I didn't hear what you're going to do for the community in addition to what you plan to do for your development. And I think that in this world and in this area, that's really important. You know, are you going to dedicate property for this and property for that? And what are you going to do? You're going to impact the schools pretty dramatically. So, do you plan to dedicate any land to schools, or that kind of conversation? I didn't hear that part of your dream. So with that, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Harper. Mr. Anonymous?
Thank you, Mayor, Council. I agree with what the man has just talked about. We recognize a dream that's been a long time coming, and I understand also the business of growing up in a rural area. But what I've seen here tonight, and when I reviewed the material in the package, I see a plan for people who are not Bulverde people. I hear big city people. I hear big developers. There is no indication that the wastewater from all of these 900 people is going to somehow be handled. What it means is the wastewater is going into Indian Creek. And Indian Creek is going through our airport. And from there, it's going into Cibolo Creek. And from there into Edwards Underground. This is a big development. It is more than what anything in Bulverde has ever had. I think that the traffic problem is going to be very significant, especially there on Bulverde Road. I appreciate the fact that they can have an area which is commercial and an area which is residential. But the density, the human density that they are dreaming about is far too much than what we would tolerate in this community to match what we have in the past, the concept that we have in our planning, in our idea of what Bulverde is supposed to be. It should be carefully examined, and the idea of making a planned development project out of it, where there is less control of the city, of you all, of what would happen, I think is dangerous. So I would suggest that when these things come before the Planning and Zoning Commission, there be very, very careful attention to the questions of density of humanity in an area which it would be difficult to put them all in and support everything around us. So these are questions that I would have, and I recognize that it was not the intention tonight to get into detail, but the concept will not work, in my opinion, as it has been presented because of those problems. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. All right, Councilman Hayes, do you have any? Just.
I know these are just early thoughts and drawings. How many residents would you anticipate? You know, I know you talked about the cluster and I like that design, but if you had a, you know, shoot from the hip number, are we looking at 150 or are we looking at 400?
Oh, certainly not looking at 400. I think 150 is probably optimistic. And water and wastewater is going to dictate that. And I will, just responding to the last gentleman, the wastewater systems that we are looking at are definitely not those that would that would be going into any water course. They would be,
So you're not looking at a discharge, you'd be looking.
Absolutely
I
not.
know originally there was talks about the cluster kind of a condo.
We're looking at, honestly, we're looking at condo septic, which is, you know, aerobic sprayed, and you can also do that on a slightly larger scale with a package plant and through a T-lab. And believe me, we have no intention of putting any effluent into water course. That's not the way I do business. And there's no way in 25 minutes to get granular. I mean, it would be so, you know, I think the point tonight was to show that there is a vision, there is a commitment. There's not a timestamp that it has to happen tomorrow. I think there are components that we could move more or less along the way more quickly. The little homestead farm portion, it's its own parcel. But everything else, we're in a position to wait and do it right. Thank you.
Councilman Councilman Alexander, sorry.
You, my turn, right?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, you know, I think we have some advantage with you being an architect on this project, and being that you're the architect and the, you know, family ranch as well. And like you said, I think, you know, not coming from a developer standpoint per se, as far as, you know, hey, we just want to clear cut and put as many homes as we can on it. So I've seen this project evolve over time, like you've been doing over the few years. And, you know, it looks like it's getting better and better, right? I mean, that's what you do, right? You try to get better and better and hear the community and do what's there for the community. So I'm not going to disregard everything that they've mentioned in public speaking today. I think those are all big time issues and concerns we have here. So, you know, traffic, water, I mean, you're going to keep hearing that, you know, wherever we're building, those are key indicators in this city right now.
So I will say with respect to traffic, and I'm down at least once every other month, and I drive up and down Bulverde Road. And with that development district, we would certainly be addressing Bulverde Road from the south to the north. I mean, we couldn't not. I mean, it's just responsible planning 101. And does that mean that, yes, there's going to be some construction trucks and regrading and all that, but there was a few months ago. But it's going to have to happen with or without our development.
Right.
So we're actually realizing that we would need to take that on as part of it.
Right, and you know, it's not a single identifier issue. You know,
Yeah.
It's an issue
It's one of many.
Yeah, exactly. So
yeah,
I get it. You know, I get it from that perspective. You know, and the fact that you know, if we can maintain this partnership that you want to have with the city, you know, like you did today, and having the community here, you know, I think it's up to us to figure out from the city how we do that efficiently and effectively to make, you know, whether it's workshops, but where we keep everything and you taking our input from the citizens and from council. So I want to find out, I guess, you know, the next steps would be, you know, how we go about doing that, right? How do we go about scheduling that? How do we keep that that momentum going to where we get what this community wants for Bulverde, not right. You know, not for someone else or somewhere else, but what does this community, want in that development?
Oh, and I may not have articulated because I was talking fast and off the hip, but while I haven't said a police station or a firehouse or whatever, because I don't know exactly what the needs are right now. But what I do know is that park recreation and preservation land is something that, from the perspective of our ranch, I couldn't think of a better gift, because my father had extraordinary stewardship over the land. And I think there's a lot of those pieces. That's why I don't want it to be a gated community. I think it should be of the people, for the people, clusters, villages like people used to live in. My house in upstate New York is in a little hamlet, and I have a little fenced in area for the dogs. Everything else is all wooded. I can look out and see the seven other houses right around me. It's unbelievably charming. It looks like a Courier and Ives postcard. And I think there is a huge, huge desire for people to live like that. Yeah. They may not be Bulverde residents now, but
yeah, I hope we can continue these conversations and getting somewhere that the council and this community and citizens can really be proud of, like you said. So I look forward to keep continuing this talking points, and your design as it's improving. And I think one other thing on the flip side of the PDD right now, is that the city has run into issues before in the past with some PDDs, and sometimes it's the wordings in contracts and how they're stated and how they're outlined. So I think we're all learning lessons from the past, but we don't want that to happen again as well. So that'd be something we really tied with legal on that to make sure that we get this done right.
Councilman Grau.
Are these like Frank Lloyd, right, inspired houses? Some groovy mid-century modern-esque? There's a little bit of Frank Lloyd Wright, because he was, more than any other architect of the 20th century, he designed with the land. Yeah. And what's really inspired the houses right now, and again, don't take them too seriously, it's going to continue. Right. But the reason that the overhangs are so deep is A, Texas sun, and B, rainwater management. Yep. And that's what's driving. Yeah, I just want to point that out. This is a very unique structure pictured here. I'm sure they're going to change quite a bit. But I see you, and I think that you have a vision, and I appreciate that. I dig the project. I think that it serves to be an amenity for the community, so that will benefit to Bulverde, because it'll have storefronts and restaurants that are truly unique and also inspirational to folks. I think that's a very big positive. I see this project being a positive for downtown, the village, because it could spark interest in growing the village more. But you have some significant hurdles in front of you. You spoke about Bulverde Road, north to south, the whole stretch needs to be improved on. Don't forget about Casey Road. That is going to be the path of least resistance for the maximum flow. So Bulverde Road and Casey Road are going to get stressed, and that's going to be a stress on everyone that lives along it, conducts day-to-day business. I see that there is a risk to the watershed there in Indian Creek, so drainage is going to be something that's going to be heavily scrutinized to make this thing work. Oh, no doubt. Right. That's why my first partner was one of the best landscape architects. Yeah, so just to summarize my input on this, I dig the concept. I think it's a positive. I think it will serve to benefit us. But the hurdles that I see that really need to be focused on is going to be the traffic on Casey Road and Bulverde Road, as well as the drainage to prevent any additional flow into that, because it's just going to come barreling south and pick up steam. Yep.
Councilman Hawkins.
Two things that I'd like to point out here. The first thing I did when I looked at this was and our 2050 Sunrise Plan to see how this lined up with what we were thinking when this plan was put together. And it didn't seem, at least as I looked along Bulverde Road, what I remember seeing there on that corridor here along Bulverde Road is that there was a strip of retail. I think that's right along here. But the rest of this was, we were looking at either 1 acre or 5 acre lots, which we called them. Oh, what is that? Large lot residential or estate residential. So when I saw that, you brought that up and you said some of this is currently zoned commercial, I was quite in shock because I didn't remember any of that being zoned, that particularly that large of a tract being commercial. So yeah, I had a question.
So this is not the city's zoning map. This is the city's future land use plan.
Right, exactly.
Which is not directly binding. The city's zoning map is directly binding, and I'll point it out over here. This block here is the commercial area he was talking about. Right. And that's been zoned that way since 2015 or 2016.
Right, but I think what we said when we did the 2050 Sunrise Plan is that we really weren't interested in that large piece of commercial real estate. We were more interested in large lot development in that area with a strip of commercial C1 along Bulverde Road, which is what currently exists. So maybe we need to consider how we get it zoned appropriately to the Sunrise 2050 plan, or we need to go back up to the plan. There seems to be a little bit of incongruity there with what we're looking at. The second point I wanted to make was high density housing always fails to deal with the reality of 3.5 vehicles per house. And invariably what you find is that there's now vehicles on the street. People aren't using their garages anymore, so what we've seen in Bulverde with all high density housing, 5 houses per acre is certain what I would regard as high density housing, is increased crime, inaccessibility of fire, trash, emergency service vehicles, and it's really not within what this city was originally developed or intended, and certainly not what any of my constituents would like to have. That's all I have there.
I wish to respond that if we're nowhere near 5 houses per acre, we're more like, it's really like 1.3 to 1.5. And that number could evolve, it could evolve down. I mean, it's really based on water, wastewater, and making the right project.
Okay, so there's note here in your proposal where it says residential 5 residential homes per acre is not correct. It's in the PDD. Those are your words, not mine.
You're saying in the aggregate, right?
Yeah, so Councilman Hawkins, the answer is yes, within that section, we're talking about 111 acres, about 150 homes on it. That's by any definition that is low density. I would also like to respond to the comprehensive plan. Our firm does a lot of zoning work in a lot of municipalities throughout the region, central and south. And in every city adopts a comprehensive plan. And they are not intended to shackle you. They're intended usually to be living, breathing documents that adapt to a variety of things, changes in conditions, changes in market forces, and to adapt to a unique vision, something that hasn't been presented to you. And so if the plan prevents you from doing something that makes sense for the community, you said it yourself. We should go back and so appreciate your comments.
Councilman Watson.
Watson is
It's not
fine.
gonna work today.
I have one specific question and then a general comment.
Sure.
I know that a previous iteration of your thoughts about this property included large lot homes that sort of the lots backed up to an existing neighborhood off of Brand Road. I couldn't quite tell from this where Brand Road is relative to the back side of the property, but it looks like there's a now significant, like nothing in the floodplain, there's a significant buffer between what you're proposing and that neighborhood. Is that?
That's a totally separate project. We're not considering that as part of the PUD. That is just simply a plat that we would take forward
with 7 additional, private.
So that's not part of this.
It's not part of it at all. When we were in contract with the previous developer and they came forward and gave the proposal at Hampton Inn, build the room, the biggest issue was the connection between Woolbury Road and Persimmon Hill Road. I heard that loud and clear.
Yep.
And so we're totally landlocked back there. But, 7, 8, 5-acre lots is not in any way gonna have traffic impact on the Persimmon Hill.
I just want to be clear that that is separate from this. That's a separate issue.
Right.
Okay, okay.
It's on the other side of Indian Creek.
It's on the other side of Indian Creek, and there will never be a connection.
Okay, so just as a general comment, you've heard clearly there are lots of details to work out, lots of questions, none of which we're really gonna address tonight. But I think really we couldn't move forward without having substantive discussions about things like traffic and drainage and, wastewater and all of those important things. I did want to acknowledge, though, that this discussion is predicated on a vision that I think you've really honored, I think, what the city has said it wants, and I've been thoughtful about putting that forward, and I just wanted to say thank you for that.
Thank you.
Councilman Kravitz.
Yeah, no, it's obvious to me that this is a special project to you, your family, family ties to it, and I think it's on a special piece of property, especially located so close to the village. And kind of like something Alexander said or Joe said, I forget, but it could be a significant anchor for the village to attract people to the village, business, the foot traffic, all that. And I agree with what Matthew Drummer said. We do have a large aging community in the city of Woolbury, and there is a lot of people looking to downsize. So be that if this is the way to do it, or I don't know, but there is a lot of concerns with traffic, drainage, water, like everybody else said. And this is a very, very, 50,000 foot view of the project. The nitty gritty is yet to come. Also, you said there was a hotel in the project. Can you speak more to the hotel? How many rooms?
It would evolve based on who I end up partnering with. I mean, every aspect of this project is certainly bigger than me. And my partner and I really love to travel. We love to travel in very unique ways, rural ways, small ways. We see this as a little boutique destination that probably doesn't have any more than 25 hotel keys. A restaurant component would be really, really important. But I think what's most significant is that we have this extraordinary farm compound that is more or less going fallow because of just generationality. We've been to some regenerative farm hotel that if you just Google that, it'll be in all of your feeds nonstop. It's really how people, they want to experience something special. They want to get away from this. And I think we've got a property that right now I feel like it's extraordinarily wasted asset that could be producing all the things it was producing 60, 80, 100 years ago. Grandparents, great grandparents.
Right.
Totally organic.
Yeah.
With an amazing restaurant.
No, I can see the vision. Yeah, I can see the vision there. And personally, I'd maybe even like to see more of the hotel and less of the commercial space. And maybe even a gathering space. I mean, everybody wants a gathering space, especially where it's located on Casey Road and Woolbury Road. So, yeah, I'd be looking forward to more talks on this and maybe some workshops where we get some more community input.
Thank you, Mr. Bremer. I like what this looks like. I like what the idea is. However, as council representatives of the city of Woolbury, we really want to make sure that we're including our city in the decisions we make and where we end up with any type of development that happens within the city. That's why we are here. And my question would be, What does this bring as a benefit to the city of Fulford? Okay? I want you to think about this. What does it actually bring as a benefit to the city of Fulford? You mentioned maybe fixing the road, but I don't see anything else. I also have a question that, I mean, are you considering a mud in here? Because I saw that somewhere in here you want to have your own water plant and in your own sewer plant. So you're gonna have a municipal utility district in there?
Water plant, not necessarily. I mean, we don't know what's gonna happen in the next few years. with Water companies. We're in talks, we're working on that, but there are multiple ways. And the sewer plant, there is a little bitty package plant at, I forget the name of it, the little development, as part of River Crossing. It's a tiny footprint, and it's, it doesn't charge any waterway. It's handled very well. Ours would be handled very sustainably. That one is now years old. Technology is changing. We want to do this the right way. We don't have the answers to those problems, but we feel it's important to start asking them now. I love the idea of a workshop, and I know these plans are flexible. That's why I like the idea of a PDD, because in the notion of PDD, it's you define the appropriate uses, and it's not like every building has the exact footprint. Now, it's allowed to grow organically, just as any project. Whether I'm renovating a house or working on a master plan, we all know that your first iterations are not going to be, and the same with this. I'm ready to iterate together.
So the city has a process about how we do this, right? And so we'd like to follow that process, okay? Council members on this council have chosen not to meet individually with any developer. If we were to meet, it would be in an open forum workshop where the city would, in general, would be able to come and hear that also. But there is a process for that. So we'd like to start to make sure that we go through the process with the city. And then we can work on maybe getting a workshop or work together and figure out where we're going to go with this. But making comments on something that's so out there right now, there's not a lot concrete in what y'all presented tonight, makes it really difficult for me to make any more comments, until we see what the requirements are. So we'd like to start the process of making sure that we go through the city and working with our planning and development department there, and then where they, after that, can bring us in and we could do workshops together on this process, and I'll have input together with our constituents from the city.
And Mayor, I'll just mention that if a plan development district application is filed, staff's role will be limited to discussing compliance with the application process with the applicant. We're not going to negotiate with the applicant. We're not going to give substantive advice to the applicant either. That'll all take place
in a workshop. Can I ask a practical question, just because I want to understand the process? So would the process then be, they file a PDD application, that comes to us, we make a decision to do workshops? Is that how that would work?
So the way it would work, if you wanted workshops, would be to they file an application. Staff would only bring it forward when it was administratively complete. You'd get a recommendation from P&Z. Then council could either consider it and adopt it. Council could lay out a new, we want to see more workshops on this and schedule them. You could send it back to P&Z or ask for joint meetings with P&Z. We basically go through an established process up to first consideration, and then council can add additional steps if they wish.
Meaning the workshops.
Right.
So there's the PDD application has to happen first. Is that what
If we're going through the PDD process, then yes.
Okay.
Question.
Yeah, no. Thank you, Matthew, Mayor, thank you. Our intent would be to workshop this until it is ready, right? Not release it at prime time. And so if filing the PDD application has to happen first, we'll do that. If we can get this process workshop before filing the PDD, we would do that as well. But Mayor, your point, we want more public engagement. We want more feedback. We want more of what we heard from y'all tonight and from two folks that spoke. And so that we get this right. And again, if process is to file the application first, then workshop it, we will be filing the intent, again, to get it right. We're glad to, we're not asked for any council action until we're satisfied on the engineering questions, utility questions, and all the things. And I know, Mary, the question was a bit rhetorical. What do you bring to Bulverde? But that's something certainly we want to have a comprehensive discussion on. Want to do a deep dive in terms of course, we can talk about tax revenue, we can talk about public improvements, we can talk about particularly the improvements to Bulverde Road, we can talk about, I don't think there's going to be a need for a school site. This is not that many units, and it could be primarily investment from professionals. What we talk about public safety, whether it's fire, police, whatever it is, certainly we want to have all of those answers. We want to make sure that you're looking at something that everyone, not just you, for you, everyone thinks that this brings benefit, value. So that's our plan.
You know, one of our biggest concerns is emergency services lately, right? We've now turned into a very big fire danger area, based upon our drought and not having water, you know, readily available. We have problems with our hydrants here. We have other issues. So putting in any type of development in this area, we're looking at it very closely. Variances for sizes of roads, a ladder truck has to make it down there, right?
Absolutely.
You know, and now you're looking at it that it's wider than, you know, the old truck. So, you know, variances for roads aren't gonna happen. You know, it's not. Emergency services need to be getting in and out of places. We need to have buffer zones for the fire department to stop, you know, fire going from one neighborhood to another. I mean, case in point, what happened this weekend, we couldn't even get the trucks in there because there is no fire area back there in the back, they left no green space. So those are things we need to be looking at, and those are going to be very at the top of our list as we move forward discussing this. So, you know, but let's follow the procedures on getting there. And, you know, we'll go through the city and get the documents filed, and then we can start, you know, looking at where we're going with this. I think all of us here would like to see something like this versus a development, you know, 1 million houses down there, you know, 3 houses per acre. But it has to be right. Okay, it has to be right. We don't want to make bad decisions. We've had too many bad decisions in the last couple of years that we are all just reeling over right now. And we don't want to leave that as our legacy for the future of our grandchildren and or those who are going to come behind us.
Sure. I do have one question about the procedure of filing a PDD and then workshop. Having done this quite a lot, I mean, I've done a lot of community development in my time with projects that are much more complicated than this and much denser areas. The workshops start very early, and I mean, just from a feasibility standpoint, how can you ask us to come with something that is pre-engineered, knowing that it's going to change? I can't go out and spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on engineers and you all come back and say, oh no, we want this. So the workshops really need to happen in advance of the PDD so we can present the right people. Or, I mean, we can have more workshops after the PDD is presented, but I think some of those workshops need to happen now.
Is there anything in our?
So, Mayor and Council, the BDD ordinance has certain protections in it.
Correct.
Information that you guys determined you wanted before considering the project. If you want to establish a different process, that's not on the agenda tonight. We'd have to put it on a future agenda and establish a separate process outside the one we've already got. And you'd need to decide what information you're willing to forego during these workshop discussions.
Is there anything that would keep us from having workshops before a PDD? What if that changes and they don't, you know, if it turns out that PDD is not going to be the way that they go? What is there anything in our ordinance to keep us from having workshops before they file?
Yeah, the PDD ordinance has a very specific process that has to be followed.
That's right, if it was a PDD ordinance, but
That's
if they haven't
the only-
filed the PDD,
Then we're not in any city process at that point, but we need council direction, which again is not on the agenda tonight, to set up that process. And we'd have to get with legal and see how that would interact with state zoning statute. And that would be another agenda
I
item.
don't know whether there was something to keep us from having,
Kind of like a due diligence process, I guess.
yeah.
I mean, it's really a feasibility question. I mean, you could kill a good development that then. Sure.
So tonight was basically listening to the presentation. We can discuss and see if we want, how we're gonna go about this later, and we can move on to the next item and leave this for discussion on a different agenda item. Okay? So tonight was just the presentation for them and for us.
I really appreciate your time.
Thank you very much.
Thank you all.
All right, thank you. All right, we're moving on to 3C. Discuss and consider adoption of an ordinance adjusting Queen Hills wastewater treatment plant, wastewater reuse rates and charges.
Fine.
It's about time.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Today we bring to you the item 3C. Aaron Martinez, the Public Works Director. Back during our budget session, we identified there was a shortage.
Our meeting is going on, sir. Thank you.
Wait a second.
I'll start over again. Back in our budget session of last year, we identified there was a shortage in the revenue at our wastewater treatment plant, which triggered us to go ahead and start a rate study for the wastewater treatment plant. So we reached out to our city engineer, Friesen Nichols, and they did a rate study, and we'll let Kara Scher from Friesen Nichols present the presentation for a rate study.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. It's a pleasure to be here tonight to share with you the results of this rate study. My name is Kara Scher. I'm with Friesen Nichols, and we, as Aaron said, started working in late fall to work through this process to look at what rates would be required to fully operate the system. Just a little bit of quick background. Today we're going to cover the background of how this plant came to be, share a little bit about the revenue and expenditure history, what your current rates are, what revenue that's going to bring in moving forward over the next few years, recommend some rates, and then forecast those, and then talk about what it'll take to get those adopted. Just a little bit of background. The Singing Hills development actually was developed, or the development began in 2015. And as a part of that process, the developer agreed to construct the plant and the associated lift station and collection system to enable wastewater treatment for that development area. So the city actually owns the infrastructure, so you own the plant and the collection system. It is actually operated by GBRA, and then you have TWC who handles the billing for that area. So all three of those were sort of part of this study. Not only did the developer fund that construction, but the developer also agreed to fund any operational deficiencies in revenue. That was a 10-year agreement, so that agreement ended in 2025. While we started looking at this on the wastewater side, we realized there's also a significant sale of reuse water from the plant, so we looked at those rates as well. Just to kind of orient you to the area, so you see the Singing Hills development is located in the ET today, and you can see the plant right up in the upper right-hand corner of that development area. It has about 353 active accounts right now. About 85% of those are residential. So although residential is the majority of the accounts, they make up about 45% of the contributed flow to the plant. When we look at the study, we do have some small growth projected in residential and in small commercial. Just to talk a little bit about the cost of service study itself, it's a pretty straightforward process. It is recommended as a best practice through the Water Environment Federation financing wastewater system. That's the process we followed. It really starts with just understanding what it costs to operate the system and maintain it, determining who the users are, how they're impacting the system, and then designing those rates. Fulverde has a uniform rate with a sort of graduated meter fee, which is pretty much a best practice for wastewater. So these are your current rates. They were adopted in July of 2015. So this is right before the plant operation started construction. Construction was actually finalized in March of 2016, so that was when full operations began. You see that you've got a separate base charge that is charged to all customers regardless of whether they use the system based on the meter size. That 5/8 inch meter, which is primarily used by residential, does include 2,000 gallons within that base fee. And then you've got a volumetric charge. So for all volumes, regardless of type of user, it's $6 per 1,000 gallons currently. That said, your residential customers are billed based on winter quarter average, and that means the billing from December, January, and February, the volume of the average of those 3 months is applied to this $6, and then that cost is applied to the bill for the next 12 months until the new winter quarter is set. For commercial customers, it's water in, water out, so your water volume is equal to your wastewater volume. For reuse, you charge currently $6.35 per 1,000 gallons. There is no separate metering fee for that. So when the plant initially started back in 2016, GBRA had an operations and maintenance budget of about $132,000. That was a partial year of operation. FY17 was the first full year. It was $140,000. Obviously, quite a few things have changed over the course of the last 10 years. So what we see now is a total cost for GBRA and some of the utilities costs that are paid by Volverde of about $821,000. There's a couple of factors that impact that. Obviously, we've all seen inflation in all areas. When you look at Bureau of Labor statistics, I'm sorry, this is reversed. The all goods CPI is 3.3%. The Bureau of Labor Statistics actually has one for water and sewer maintenance as well, and that's 3.9. So when we look at the cumulative impact of the last 10 years on water, wastewater maintenance, a little over 46%. In the last few years, we've seen prices grow a little more rapidly. The second category is looking at the changes from the 2021 budget. You've seen personnel increases of 163%, supplies at 90%. The biggest driver there is your chemical cost for the plant. Maintenance 120 and your administrative costs 163. That does include your billing cost, which is up about 95%. And then as we look at this system and its aging, there is a desire to create a reserve to be able to rehab and replace equipment within the system. So historically, the city has budgeted $10,000 for those costs. There is a proposal in the current year in these rates to increase that to $30,000 a year, so that you have a little bit of flexibility should you need replacement. So this is looking back at the last 5 years. You can see that those years that have the little red star, your expenditures outweighed your revenue. So in those years, the developer was asked to pay the difference. When we look at what's budgeted in the current year, the operating expense is $820,000. There was a budgeted amount of $400,000. That really doesn't capture what the expectation is in the current year. It's just what was budgeted in this year. When we look a little more closely at that, you can see that what is actually projected in the current year, if you made no rate changes, would be $625,000. So that includes the revenue that you would get both from wastewater sales and from reuse revenue. Your expenses with that $30,000 for your capital reserve is $850,000, creating a deficiency of $225,000. Without any changes to rates, you can see that the deficiency continues. And what's important to note is that the general fund really serves as the backstop to the wastewater fund. So in the absence of adequate wastewater revenue, the general fund is filling that gap. So to be able to fill that with wastewater revenue, these are the proposed rates. So you can see we've adjusted both the meter size, the base fee rate, and the volumetric rate. So if you look across all those categories of meter sizes, it's a uniform 25% increase in all of those. Residential is usually that 5/8 meter, so they would see an increase of $13.50 on the base fee. Volumetric fee would go from $6 per thousand to $10 per thousand. We would retain that 2,000 gallons included with the 5/8 meter and then continue to bill on winter quarter average. And reuse would grow from $6.35 to $8.50 per thousand. So this is where you see sufficient revenues to cover your ongoing expenses. We've separated wastewater and reuse revenues here. FY26 actually assumed an earlier implementation, so it would be slightly less than that if you're adopting the rate effective in May. This is what the typical bill change looks like. So first we have the residential 5/8 meter. They would see that $13.50 increase in base fee and $12 on the volumetric. And then we've included the non-residential 1.5-inch meter. It's still a pretty large meter. It is an area where you've got growth. You've got about 12 of these in your system right now. So their average usage is about 51,000 gallons, so about 10 times what you see from a residential customer. So you see the total monthly increase almost 260. And these percentages pretty well align with what we saw on the CPI. So what council would need to do to move this forward is consider an ordinance that should be on your agenda tonight. That would allow TWC to begin the notification process. So they will have a bill insert that they already have designed that would go out beginning at the end of March through April. And the new bills with the new rate would start in May. I believe they bill May 15th. So from there, I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilman.
Several questions. Expandability. Do you have any idea of the expandability of that facility?
Yeah, I can answer that, Councilman Olson. We had actually also had reached out to Freeze Nichols, our city engineer, to do a study on the expandability and expanding the plant and the growth at that area. And it found out that complete growth at that plant would reach, I think, 73%. So we wouldn't need to expand that wastewater treatment plant if it's built out.
Okay, so as the 46-281 interchange continues to branch out, is that facility?
I'll answer that question. The current service area does not include all 281 and 46. It is what it is right now. So there was a study that was initiated in the previous city administration that incorporated all of that and called for a $15 million plant expansion. And that was assuming that we were going to go to all four corners. I found nowhere in council directive, the previous direction for city council, undertake that much of a study. We brought it back in line to our current service area, and the question was asked, do we have adequate capacity in the plant right now using the current boundaries? And the answer is yes.
Okay, so essentially that plant is a silo assigned to serve that particular area, which we define as Singing Hills in the residential area they're in.
Correct.
It's not expandable as currently configured to serve any of the other corners or any expandability within the city.
That is correct. You would have to give us direction and vote amongst yourselves and tell us that, come up with that plan, Mike. Let's see what that looks like. But I will tell you that the dollar amount starts at 15 million and probably goes north from there.
Okay. Second question, on the revenue side. You said there was 3 different components to revenue.
Yes.
Any idea of how that's configured? In other words, what percentage of it is base rate? And what percentage of it is wastewater volume? And what percentage is reuse volume?
Right, so reuse is only used by about 30 customers. So it's really only used by larger commercial entities using it for things like irrigation.
Right.
So you wouldn't see reuse across your service area. I do not have to quick math the breakdown on residential. It is weighted fairly heavily on the base fee side.
So you would say 50, 60, 75% interest rate?
No, that is a little high. Just one second here to get to that page. Actually, let me just go back. So if you look at the typical bill, so we have got an $88 bill with $58 of it is the base fee. I was told a long time ago not to do math behind a podium.
I hear it.
Public math.
I'll just try to. Okay, so
Probably about 60%.
yeah, we're on the commercial side of the school. Fine. Okay, all right. I was just trying to figure out on scalability, what revenue could be scalable. Okay. And last piece, GBRA expense. Does the city pay an uplift to GBRA over the cost, over actual cost?
I do not believe so. I believe it is, they provide their true cost and they settle up at the end of the year.
Okay, so it's true cost. How about on capital? On capital? Do we pay an uplift on capital? Okay. Because there's a cost of money component.
So you haven't had any major capital improvements at the plant since its original construction.
Right.
Other than just repair.
Okay, we're talking about an escrow now, of what, 30,000 that we want to start to escrow. That then allows us the capability of having our own capital as opposed to GBRA capital.
Okay,
For
so
improvements and maintenance.
you want to answer our
People jump in.
Yeah, currently we don't have no reserve for the actual wastewater treatment plant. So this 30,000 will be placed at reserve for any, if the lift station goes down or, start building that reserve because of the aging process of the plant itself.
So let me give a bit on that. You have no idea about the status of that plant in terms of the capital and what may or may not be working out.
Yeah.
We haven't done that study. That study is coming. And only when we do that study will we then be able to come back in and address whether that 30,000 is acceptable. So I am not going to make a statement that that $30,000 is going to. I think too many sewer plant modifications, too many sewer plant improvements to make that statement. And I can just about guarantee you, when you do that study to look at the equipment in that plant, you're going to see some stuff. And we'll have to prioritize that so we don't put it on the backs of the general ratepayers in the city or the citizen tax, if you will. So there's still a lot of work to be done. We're doing good by doing this study now.
Yeah.
It should have been done years ago.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay. A long time ago, it wasn't. So we're coming in tonight. The other aspect may not get mentioned by anybody here. Every month we delay making a decision, it costs us $20,000.
I know, we're going negative. Yeah. Thank you, Mike. Yeah, those were the concerns. What you articulated is exactly the concerns I have. This is a very expensive asset. It's an asset that needs.
It's an asset that I'm not in a position where I can say it's an asset that's been ignored. I won't be so bold as to make that statement, but every bit of my 29 years as the city manager tells me that's the direction we're looking.
So you're clearly identifying risk right now.
Well, it's on the agenda.
And if you sense some frustration on my part, please bear with me.
Gotcha. That's all I have.
That's where we're at. Okay, Councilman Watson.
So my question had to do with where we're on the spectrum of the useful life of the existing equipment, and what I'm hearing you say is we don't really know because we haven't done that study yet. So that second question was going to be, is 30,000 a year sufficient? And the answer is we don't really know.
Correct.
Then I don't have any other questions.
I'll piggyback off of that.
Councilman Kraywitz.
Well, I'll piggyback off of that. Yes, there's a lot of questions that we had, but this rate increase has been needed for a long time. We need to act on it.
100%.
I do want to also add that we will be coming back in 4 to 5 years to do the study again. And at that point, if we need to raise that reserve more, then we'll do it.
I'd like to come back soon.
So I'm gonna say that we're paying this out of the funds that we have right now. that we didn't budget enough for because we didn't know about it. So now that we have the study that we requested, that now we know where we're at for now. I mean, obviously, we don't know what's inside because we haven't gotten that far. This was just the preliminary study that we did. And we're gonna be looking at having to do the other and figure it out, but we also need to have some cushion, right, guys?
Well, and just to clarify, there's been no rate increase for 10 years.
Nothing.
Okay.
There
so, I
hasn't
mean,
been a
we're over it.
study, there
We're
hasn't
over
been anything, and this is
Yeah.
why this got done now.
So
So-
we're gonna be reimbursed.
We need to make sure, I mean, not only that, we picked up the electricity now that we weren't actually doing before. There's other things in there, we need to have a cushion on there, you know, and we can't go any further and not have this in our budget correctly, 100%.
So, yeah, we want to make sure we're not paying.
Yeah. And we need to make sure that we're in, you know, in rate where we need to be on the rates, because we're way under where we should be. Okay, all right,
Inflation has increased 46%.
correct?
Yeah.
Oh, I know.
So, you know, and nobody looks at it, so we've got to look at it now and make sure that we're getting it right to where we have a starting point to do it again in 3 years, 2 or 3 years, not 5. 2 or 3 years would be probably about the time we need to relook at it. Right? And just because the infrastructure and where we're going to be on deterioration, whatever else needs to be. Okay? And then we talked about the lift, so there's a lot of things up. This Councilman Goff, do you have anything?
I'm just looking at the residential versus non-residential rate and wanting to see, is there a way that we could shift the shock more towards the residential?
So it's really not by class, it's really by meter size.
Right, but.
Because all the volumes are the same.
Right.
So the rationale is that the larger your meter, the more water you can take, the more water you bring in, the more wastewater you're discharging, right?
Which are our
So,
commercial.
so it is part of that cost of service determination is that the higher volume bears its true cost, right?
If you look at the size of the meter, it costs them more to have that meter than it does for the residentials to have.
No, I'm aware, I'm just looking at 40% is gonna go to the average Joe that has a house increase, and 53% is gonna go to the commercial entity. Is there enough commercial entities to bear a higher cost and a lower increase to the
Understood.
residential?
Right. So what you're seeing here is an example just of the 1.5-inch meter, right? So you have a number of customers that are commercial that have a 1-inch meter or a 3-inch meter, right? So this slide is not a reflection of the whole system, right? So the only way you could do that would be to reduce the base fee on the base. By base, it's all meter based, it's not classification based, with the exception of winter quarter average, right? And that would you have to raise the others. That is inconsistent though with equivalency factors on how the system is used. So you could do that. It wouldn't necessarily be consistent with the standard cost of service equity.
That's my only concern. I see this, there's a huge need here, we have to address it. I just don't want the initial spike on the bill to be borne by a homeowner. I would like to see that deferred more towards the larger users, which are commercial entities. And if that's a way that we could do that and get the money that is necessary to sustain operations.
Yeah, it just wouldn't be consistent with the equitable distribution of the impact on the system.
Okay, I understand that. I don't know if that's prohibitive or.
One thing you have to look at, you just can't discriminate from the meter size to fee. So you can't.
And you have some residentials that have 3/4 inch or 1-inch meters. So it would be hard to just pull them out of that meter size.
Well, you guys know where they're at. I just want to make that statement.
Councilman Alexander.
Yeah, I think this is a no-brainer. I mean, we gotta catch up. We can't have our expenses outweighing our revenues, and that's just a good way to fail in business. So, the other thing that I had a question on was your revenue and expense projections. So is this if we increase that?
Yes, if you're looking at this with the green line and the blue bars.
Okay, so,
So,
well, actually, I was looking at this one too.
okay, so that one assumes that you make no change in rate. So this just projects current rates with inflation, right? This one projects the new rates. It does assume a greater number of months in 26, so since we're a little later in the year, it'll be a little less than you see here. But as you see, your revenue is now enough to cover your expenditures.
So about 29 people balance out at this rate.
Yeah, there's a little give and take in there, but you're essentially meeting your revenue requirement
Okay.
for all 5 years. Although the point of looking at it in less than 5 years is still valid, because this is, saying basic inflationary impact where you may have something happen within the system that you need to address.
Absolutely. The other question I had was, so you mentioned 30 users out of how many use the reuse?
So you have 353 active meters, and you've got about 29, 30 customers. We've asked for 2 years of reuse data, and that varies slightly on who's using it, 29, 30 users.
Okay, and that's a non-separate meter?
It is a separate meter.
It is a separate meter. Okay, so my question, I guess, is that we ever thought about selling that water? I mean, that water got to go somewhere, right? So what are we doing with the water now?
So with the reuse water that's not currently being sold,
Right.
so that should be
Should it be
discharged.
discharged?
I'll let you be the engineer.
Yes.
It's okay.
So
Yeah.
that should be discharged. See, that's the way.
And currently, the residential
The
side,
residential with a phone for that?
yeah, residential's not fun for,
Yeah.
so it's basically commercial.
I mean, with the water crisis we're in now, I mean, that's.
It sure would be nice.
So can we look, I mean, I don't know if this is the place, I mean, we've got 2 separate issues, but I'd like to look into a way to recapture some of that, whether it's construction or something. I mean, that's.
Okay, so let's stick to where we are tonight, which we're doing is talking about the rates, okay? We can add that to another agenda item, okay? All right. Councilman Hayes?
Long time overdue.
Yeah.
I hope this is enough to capture everything that we're gonna need. And it looks like it is, if it's through 2029. And, yeah, should have been done years ago. So like I said.
All right. Anything else? That's it. Okay. So I'm gonna make a motion that, we consider the adoption of an ordinance adjusting the Singing Hills wastewater treatment plant, wastewater and revenue rates and charges.
Reuse rate.
Huh?
Reuse rate.
And, what did I say?
Revenue.
Reuse rates, I'm sorry, and charges. I didn't.
I'll
Okay,
second that.
so, you got it?
You made a motion to consider the adoption.
We're approving
Oh, we're approving, I'm making the motion to approve the adoption of the ordinance adjusting Singing Hills wastewater treatment plant, wastewater and reuse rates and charges.
Second it again.
Councilman Hayes, seconded. Okay, all in favor? Aye. Okay. All right, 3D. Consider an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Bulverde, Texas, amending the City of Bulverde Code of Ordinances, Chapter 14, zoning, Section 14.12.005, home office by adding provisions related to home-based businesses, including allowing manufacturing uses within residential zones as required by House Bill 2464.
All right, Mayor and members of council, the city has historically regulated what kinds of non-residential business activity can take place inside of residentially zoned areas in neighborhoods. And that was fine up until this last legislative session, where the legislature came in and basically dug up the field, so to speak, plowed under our ordinances and imposed a new set of regulations if the city wants to regulate this type of activity at all. And of course, as you might expect, it's much less restrictive than our previous regulations. Right now, basically, we're not allowed to require a permit or under the new law, we will not be allowed to require a permit for any kind of commercial activity happening in a residential zone. And we won't even be able to pursue compliance unless it's, as long as it's not visible from the street. And there's provisions in there about not substantially increasing traffic or noise, but there's no language in there on how that would be enforced. So that would be exceptionally difficult. The amendment you have tonight implements everything we're allowed to implement under the state statute and follows very closely the state statutory language. And I'll be happy to take any questions you might have.
Councilman Hopkins.
So Danny, down the street from me is a gentleman who has what's called an earth moving business. In his earth moving business, he has skid steers, bobcats, and a variety of equipment, trailers, etc. that he leaves either parked on the side of the street or in his front yard. Will he still be allowed to do this after we pass this?
No, you're not allowed to do it now.
Oh, I got you.
I'm just assuming that it hasn't been, we haven't gotten a complaint about it or for some reason. But no, it is, if the equipment's visible from the street.
As long as I'm not making that legal, I'm good with this.
No, it would not be legal under this.
Councilman Watson.
I have a question. I'm already getting complaints about a home-based business in OBN, where employees of the business are parking on the street. Does this materially change our ability to deal with that?
No, the city has not designated any area in OBN as no parking zone. And so, I don't think that's going to affect any enforceability about that.
I guess what I'm asking is, since this says something like not materially affecting traffic.
It says, it says significantly. It either says substantial or, I'll find the exact language here.
Yeah.
Does not, it says does not generate on-street parking or a substantial increase in traffic through the area.
Okay, so if there's
But I'd
already-
have to, I'd have to prove that those people that are parking there are employees of the business before I could do anything about it. And, I mean, they might be honest, and they might not. It would be a close issue.
Okay.
Yeah. And if they pulled the vehicles onto the property, we'd be out of luck.
Sure. Yeah, I think the issue is it's right, the roads are narrow. And if you've got 5 cars parked along the street, we have problems with people driving by. I just wasn't sure, A, what our options are currently, and B, if this materially changes that. Okay.
Certainly.
Councilman Kravitz.
Yeah, I got no questions. It's just a compliance item with changing state laws. And that's just the times we live in where the state sticks it to us and any chance they get.
Councilman Hayes.
100% second what he's saying.
Okay.
Nothing we can do.
Councilman Alexander.
Yeah, I mean, I think this can get messy. Just much like the state, they don't define what significant traffic is, and then I don't know if it means we got to tidy up ordinances because this can get out of hand real quick. I think the intent of the state was to allow people to work their real estate business from home, work their tutoring business from home, and have a low impact home-based office. But now you can, they didn't say you can't do this because the state doesn't want to always say you cannot do this, and that. So the open interpretation of this, I think, is going to get messy.
Well, I think what they did do in here and where they covered some of this was all municipal regulations related to health and sanitation, transportation and traffic control, solid and hazardous waste, pollution and noise control, and all municipal fire and building codes. If you're operating a business in your house, you're probably not thought about all of these. So.
Well, and I'll point out, without building permits, I have no way to enforce the building code.
There's no enforcement.
So that's kind of a ridiculous provision, but.
I agree.
That's a feel-good provision.
I agree. So I think, if I wanted to run a catering business, I don't need an ANSEL system and sanitary law from home, you can do it. This is just, it's one of those things where I get the intent of it. It was to allow people to tutor, teach home, band or something, like tutoring for band or whatever the case is. But, it doesn't, I don't think the intent was that you can have operating equipment, parked out front and all over your yard, scattered at your house because you work construction business. Honestly, but then again, leads to, well, how does that, what's the dividing line? It's going to happen, so it's just, this is a mess. And I don't know what to say about it. I don't know if we have to agree to it or not, but it's important.
You don't have a choice. Let's move on.
So, do you know what the intent of House Bill 24 was?
I don't know what the real intent was. I suspect that they have some friends doing something that will magically be covered by the loose language in this bill, and that they said it was for. Things like cities coming in and stopping people from working from home. I don't know a single city that does that, but that's a legend.
One of the intents was what happened during COVID. So it was to be able to continue to have home-based business, because a lot of the businesses went to home-based during COVID and have maintained there. And then they were having problems.
Placate their constituency with the bill.
And all of that was already allowed in the city of Woodbury. We didn't prohibit that.
Well, then I will commend you and your staff for identifying areas in our ordinances that need to be revised so that we can maintain our teeth as a city and enforce. And I look forward to growing the compliance department within our state.
Sure.
Okay, all right. We have no further questions. Do we have a motion here to do this?
I move we adopt the amendment to our Code of Ordinances, Chapter 14, zoning section, and land the right spot, zoning section 14.2.005, home office, by adding provisions related to home-based businesses, including allowing manufacturing uses within residential zones as required by HB 246.
Second.
All right. All in favor? Aye. All right, approved. Unanimous. Okay.
You said second, I think you said say it again.
Yeah.
Drinking a lot of water.
Okay, let's move on. Okay, 3E, we're gonna consider an ordinance of the city council of the city of Bulverde, Texas, amending the city of Bulverde Code of Ordinances, chapter 14, zoning, section 14.08.002, maintenance and irrigation of landscape areas by adding provisions related to approval of landscape materials not irrigated by mechanical underground irrigation system.
Mayor, members of council, currently and for a long time, the city's ordinances have required commercial businesses to install certain landscaping, and also required that landscaping be irrigated by basically a sprinkler or subsurface irrigation system. A few years ago, I think it was about 3 or 4 years ago, Texas Water Company stopped allowing businesses to get separate irrigation meters because of the drought conditions. They also would find businesses running irrigation on off their regular water supply meter. And so the city over time has been issuing a few temporary C of Os for businesses, hoping that at some point that would remedy itself. We had a meeting with Texas Water, I think in October of last year maybe, where they affirmatively declared to us that they do not anticipate ever lifting that restriction. And so right now, folks are caught in a catch-22 where we're requiring them to have irrigation, but they cannot get it from our primary commercial water supplier. So what this amendment will do is provide a way out. If somebody can give us something sealed by a landscape architect that says they've provided they've met the requirements with landscaping that doesn't require that type of irrigation, then we'll be able to approve that permit and let it move forward to a full certificate of occupancy. If we take any questions you might have.
So is it gonna say now that they are required to have a what do we call it, zero scape?
No, it'll be an option. As a practical matter, I don't believe anybody could put in regular irrigation right now because the water company will not give it to them,
Right.
but it's still technically allowed. But as a practical matter, folks are probably going to have to do xeriscaping. Then maybe there's something else out there I'm not aware of. I'm not that up on landscaping technologies and advancement, but I imagine we'll see a lot of rocks and cactus going forward.
We're okay.
We have
We're gonna be Phoenix.
These are the
So does
times.
anybody have any comments on this at all? Okay, all right, so do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve an ordinance for the city council of the city of Bulverde, Texas, amending the city of Bulverde Code of Ordinances, chapter 14, zoning section 14.08.002, maintenance and irrigation of landscape areas by adding provisions related to approval of landscape materials not irrigated by a mechanical underground irrigation system.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
that's not related to posted agenda items? Anything? No, we don't have any, we've done those. And so we're gonna, close, and go to executive session pursuant to Texas Government Code and Annex 551.04 personnel matters. Personnel matters, the city council will meet in executive session to deliberate the appointment, appointment, or removal of members of the planning and zoning commission. And 5B, the city council will meet in executive session to seek the advice of legal counsel about pending litigation, Lisa Cook versus the city of Fulton. Cause number C2025-0740A. All right. Number 822. Thank you, Chief. Oh, he left.
Yeah.
See, I didn't have my glasses on. Okay.
Tie down though.
Have already?
Yeah,
I'm not sure. Not that much.
north of $100, right?
We can get you with the land.
Does she charge a landing fees?
Oh, yeah.
What's she charging?
I got a hanger.
What's the wash rack? Is that Anderson's?
No, it's the airport. Yeah, it was closed for a little bit because of fire control.
All right,
I think it's
we'll call us back to session at 8:15 PM. All right, and, we have no actions considered in the executive session. Correct? We got different on that? All right, so we can adjourn this meeting at 8:50 PM.
Take off.